Hello there and welcome to Folk-a-Dilly Tales. Every week we will be here to tell you some crazy stories, some amazing poems accompanied by some fantastic songs. My name is John Hales and I will be your host. This week, The Hand of Glory.
Whitby, 1931. The North Sea fog coiled through the cobble streets like a hungry ghost, and in the smoky snug of the Black Horse Inn, 3 men were poisoning themselves with cheap whiskey and expensive dreams. In the pub was an old salt named Pete, a man whose stories were as pickled as the herring in the harbour. Night after night he'd fascinate them with tales, not of fish, but of fortune. Their favourite story was that of the Hand of Glory, a thief's greatest prize, which, when the fingers were lit like a candle, could open any door and send the occupants of the building into a deep sleep.
Cut from a hangman swinging on a gibbet,
Pete whispered, his voice a dry rattle.
Cured in salt and dog's piss, smoked for a month under a new moon. But the true test, the true test is the courage. You hang it on the church door and keep watch in the porch till dawn. If the dead don't claim your soul from fear, the hand is yours.
Jack, the brutish leader of the trio, leaned in.
And then what? You just light it and walk in?
Almost,
Pete said, a grave look in his eyes.
but the magic has a price. You must give it a voice. You must chant the words or the sleep it brings will take you too.
He made them memorize the rhyme, line by slurred line, until they could mumble it through the whiskey haze. Now open lock to the dead man's knock, fly bolt and bar and band, nor move nor swerve, joint muscle or nerve at the spell of the dead man's hand. Sleep all who sleep, wake all who wake, but be as dead for the dead man's sake.
Forget those words,
Pete warned.
and you'll sleep as soundly as your victims.
But there was a big problem. Finding and then cutting off the hand from a man swinging in a gibbet was easy enough in 1731, but not in 1931. Pete revealed a solution.
There is a real Hand of Glory sitting in a glass case up at the Whitby Museum right now.
Greed, now, was simpler than courage. The break-in at the museum was unnervingly easy. The real horror was the hand itself. In the beam of Jack's trembling torch, it was an outstretched hand of a criminal, tendons like frozen leather, glowing with a sickly pallor. It felt unnaturally cold. A pang of fear gripped Jack, but the thought of gold and silver washed it away. Their target was Ebbo's, the jewellers on Church Street. Huddled in the shadowed doorway, Jack struck a match. The flame caught on the first withered fingertip burning with a faint, ghastly blue light. A deep, resonant clunk echoed from within the heavy oak door, and it opened. The power was real. They spilled inside, stuffing silver and gold into their sacks. In their giddy triumph, the rhyme was a distant memory, a silly verse drowned out by the clatter of loot. They felt invincible. Then Charlie, the youngest, slurred.
Jack, I don't feel right.
It was not the gentle pull of sleep, but a violent plunge into oblivion. The ghastly blue light pulsed, and the ancient magic, unchecked by the sacred words, turned on them. One by one, they crumpled to the floor, their snores soon the only sound in the shop. They awoke to the humiliating sting of smelling salts and the cold clink of handcuffs over their wrists from the local constable. 2 days later, they stood in the Whitby Magistrates' Court, a cramped room that smelled of polish and regret. The magistrate, a man named Justice Dobbs, peered down at them over his spectacles. The facts were read aloud. The broken museum window, the stolen hand of glory, their unconscious forms discovered amidst the gold, silver and jewels by the constable, and a very irate Mr. Ebor.
Let me understand this,
Justice Dobbs said, his voice dry as dust.
You went to the considerable effort of procuring a legendary magical artifact, one capable of subduing an entire household, and yet you slept on the job? Is that the essence of your defense? Incompetence?
A titter ran through the public gallery.
This is not high sorcery,
Dobbs continued.
It is staggering stupidity. You are not master criminals. You are a public nuisance. The charge of attempted theft is serious. However, as you were interrupted by your own foolishness, the value of the goods was not lost. Therefore, I find you guilty. The sentence is a fine of 10 shillings for each of you.
He paused, letting the sum sink in, a small fortune to men like them.
But,
he added, a faint, cruel smile touching his lips,
I am factoring in the time you have already served. The museum curator has requested a donation for the disturbance of a historical exhibit. I order you to pay 2 shillings each to the museum. Furthermore, for the inconvenience of having 3 grown men snoring on his floor, you will pay Mr. Ebor a further 2 shillings each. The remainder of your fine is suspended. Let this be a lesson. The law may have caught you, but it seems you were first undone by a dead man's hand, and the stupidity of forgetting a nursery rhyme.
The gavel fell. The jewels were returned to Ebor jewellers. The hand of glory went back to the museum, and the thieves, heavy with shame, were released back into the foggy Whitby street. At the Black Horse they met up again with Pete, where he consoled them with the next incredible tale.
Deadman's Hand. The fire burned low in the pub on the quay. An old salt he whispered of sorcery. A hand of glory, a thief's grim prize that could open up locks and close people's eyes. They listened in to the story that night and conjured a plan that would stay out of sight. So they didn't hear the end of the tale and dismissed the rest over cold beer and ale. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. You can open up the lock to the dead man's knock. Yes, you'll open up the lock to the dead man's knock. The three of them robbed the museum that night, and as they had planned, stole the dead man's hand. They thought it the key to a life filled with ease, and that they could plunder the town as they please. They lit up its fingers, a pale, ghostly flame. They thought all those riches they'd happily claim. And then, just like magic, the lock fell away. The door slowly opened to brighten their day. Open the lock, open the lock. Hear the dead man he knocks. Fly bolt and bar, door opens ajar to the spell of the hand. Don't move, don't swerve, joint, muscle or nerve, for you'll never stand, you'll never stand. Sleep all who sleep, wake all who wake, but be as the dead for the dead man's sake. They woke not to riches, but to a cell floor. An officer came to open the door. Their faces were pale with shame and despair. They tried to say sorry, but nobody cared. The judge passed his sentence. The gavel came down as the talk of the curse swept all through the town. They should have just listened to the old salt that day when he tried to explain what they needed to say. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. You can open up the lock to the dead man's knock. Yes, you'll open up the lock to the dead man's knock.
to say sorry, but nobody cared. The judge passed his sentence, the gavel came down. The talk of the curse swept all through the town. They should have just listened to the old salt that day when he tried to explain what they needed to say. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. You can open up the lock to the dead man's knock. Yes, you'll open up the lock to the dead man's knock. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. You can open up the lock to the dead man's knock. Yes, you'll open up the lock to the dead man's knock. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. Listen to the curse of the dead man's hand. Listen to the curse.
Next week, the strange tale of the Whitby polar bear.
In the days of the sails, in a world filled with dreamy clouds, 'cause we sailed where the icy sea touches the sky, and the glaciers lie peaceful and old, and the sailors toil, tired and cold, and surrounded by a snow where the sun thaws the permafrost, and the cold winds that blow freeze the water like diamonds. The sheep there die, mighty and bold, to protect her calf, or so it is told. Hear the roar in the market town square. It's the sound of brewing the bear. A barn forging eyes in the depths of despair, and the name of that bear was brewing from the
Folk-a-Dilly Tales is a Zingaro Blue production. It was written, produced and edited by Mario and Lesley Price. Mixed by Frank Erlenkämper. Our storyteller this week was Nick Murray Brown. The poem was read by Mario Price. The poems, lyrics and songs are also written by Mario and Lesley Price. My name is John Hales, and I've been your host. The contents of this podcast are based on the book Folk Stories, Legends and Poems by Mario and Lesley Price, and are available as a book and an e-book from Amazon under the name Folk Stories, Legends and Poems. The music can be found under that same name and as volumes 1 and 2 streaming on all major platforms. Today's background music was supplied by Scott Buckley. You can find the link to these compositions in the comments below. Be sure to check out our music videos that tell some of our stories on YouTube. For more information about Zingaro Blue, visit our website at www.zingaroblue.co.uk or find additional links in the comments section. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please hit the follow button so that you can listen to the next episode of Folk-a-Dilly Tales. Thanks for listening.